Top 10 countries black people are fleeing. What's forcing them to leave so fast? Predictions for 2025. Black people aren't just moving, they're escaping. And not for better weather or a change of scenery. We're talking passports renewed, families uprooted, and hope packed right next to survival instincts. Why? Because when discrimination, economic instability, and silent violence become daily realities, the message is clear: it's time to go. Across continents, black communities are quietly and powerfully shifting the map. This isn't just about migration. It's about reclaiming dignity, protecting future generations, and refusing to wait for justice that never arrives. Some nations preach inclusion, but their laws, streets, and institutions often tell another story. Racial profiling, social isolation, zero political voice. The promise of equality feels like a fading illusion. So where exactly are black people choosing to leave behind in growing numbers? And why now, more than ever, is this wave gaining momentum in 2025? Stay with us, because this list will not only inform you, it may open your eyes to patterns too familiar to ignore. Welcome to The Journey of Wisdom, where we explore stories that matter with heart and truth. If you're ready for clarity and compassion, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's walk this path together. Number 1. China. Let's take a deep breath and gently unfold a painful truth. China stands at the top of the list of countries that many black people are choosing to leave, not just because of discomfort, but because of daily, deep-rooted discrimination that threatens their dignity and safety. Despite the country's open embrace of foreign investments and international trade, black individuals often find themselves caught in a quiet storm of exclusion and mistrust. It became heartbreakingly visible in 2020 during the early waves of the COVID-19 pandemic, when scenes from Guangzhou, a city with a significant African population, showed black residents being evicted from their homes, denied hotel accommodations, and forced to sleep on the streets, not because of anything they had done, but simply because of who they are. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a mirror showing what had always been simmering beneath the surface. Discrimination wasn't new, just newly exposed. Long before the pandemic, the signs were already there. Job listings explicitly stating no black applicants, international students subjected to constant police scrutiny, and daily life laced with stares, suspicion, and subtle threats. For many black people living in China, there is a constant, unspoken tension, a fear that safety, housing, or even respect could be taken away at any moment. And what cuts deeper is the contrast between the paper policies and real-life treatment. While African nations are seen as partners in trade and diplomacy, welcomed with handshakes and smiles in the halls of government, on the streets their people are too often met with distrust and exclusion. This double standard reveals a jarring hypocrisy, a country that builds bridges across continents but fails to build human bridges at home. One African resident described it poignantly: "We're not being pushed out because of what we do, but because of what we look like." That's a wound that doesn't heal easily. So here's something to reflect on. How do you stay in a place that turns your skin into a liability, where your presence is treated like a risk, even if you follow every rule? When your identity becomes something to hide, just to survive, it drains your spirit. And that's why more and more black individuals are making a different choice, one rooted in self-respect. They're walking away, not out of weakness, but with strength. They are choosing to seek out spaces that honor their humanity, offer peace of mind, and allow them to grow without fear. In a world that often talks about equality while practicing something far different, their quiet exodus is a powerful form of wisdom, a lesson for all of us. Because life is too short to settle in places where we are merely tolerated when we deserve to be embraced. Number 2. Saudi Arabia. Let's take a closer look at Saudi Arabia, not through the polished lens of tourist promotions, but through the eyes of those who live behind the scenes of its grand skyline. While this wealthy nation offers job opportunities that draw in millions, particularly from Africa, the truth for many black African migrants is far from the promise of prosperity. At the heart of the issue is the kafala system, a sponsorship arrangement that might seem structured on the surface, but in reality functions as a tool of control. Under this system, workers are tied to their employers in ways that rob them of basic freedoms. They can't change jobs, leave the country, or even live independently without their sponsor's consent. For many, especially domestic workers, this setup is less like employment and more like modern-day enslavement, disguised as economic opportunity. The harshest toll is felt by black African migrants, especially women, who often endure long, grueling work hours, withheld wages, verbal and physical abuse, and the confiscation of passports, which traps them in their situation. Living in constant fear, many sleep on kitchen floors, are punished for eating leftover food, and are stripped of their dignity daily. Human rights organizations have raised alarms for years, but meaningful change has been painfully slow. Even voicing a complaint can lead to retaliation, detention, deportation, or worse, making it nearly impossible for workers to seek justice or protection. Over 2 million African migrants are currently in Saudi Arabia, and far too many are caught in this oppressive system with no safety net or legal recourse. What makes it even more painful is the racism embedded in everyday interactions, where being black isn't just seen, it's used against you. Disrespect, racial slurs, and being treated as less than human are regular experiences for many. In such an environment, the dream of earning money abroad to support families back home often turns into a nightmare of survival. And so the hard truth emerges. The opportunity in Saudi Arabia isn't in arriving, it's in finding a way out, in reclaiming one's freedom, and in never being forced to return. In today's world, where we're more connected and aware than ever, we must ask ourselves how we define success. Is it worth it to chase a paycheck if it costs your peace, your voice, and your safety? For those considering migration, wisdom lies in doing thorough research, listening to the stories of those who've lived the experience, and never ignoring the warning signs masked by wealth and infrastructure. And for the rest of us, it's a call to advocate for justice, raise awareness, and never look away from the suffering that still exists in places hidden from the tourist camera. Number 3. India. Let's take a closer look at something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. India, home to over 1.4 billion people, rich in history, diversity, and spiritual traditions, is also a place where, for many black individuals, racism walks boldly in broad daylight. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be constantly watched, followed, or judged simply for the color of your skin, then listen closely. For African students and black expats living in India, the experience is far from welcoming. From the moment they step off the plane, they're met not with curiosity or kindness, but with stares that cut deep, whispers that carry slurs, and assumptions that reduce them to stereotypes. You're either treated like a walking playlist of Afrobeat music, or you're viewed as a criminal. What does that say about the lens through which we choose to see each other? People have reported being denied service at restaurants, harassed while shopping, or being followed in malls, not because of anything they did, but simply because of who they are. And it's not just subtle or occasional, it can turn violent. In 2017, African students in Greater Noida were attacked by a mob in broad daylight, while bystanders recorded it instead of intervening. Can you imagine the fear, the anger, the helplessness? This isn't about isolated incidents, it's about a pattern, a climate of misunderstanding and bias, Unlike countries that have long histories with African diasporas, India lacks black community infrastructure, which means most face this alone, no real support system, no safe space to exhale. How would you feel walking into a classroom or a grocery store, always on edge because of how people look at you? This question isn't just rhetorical. It invites us to reflect, to empathize, and to challenge the way we allow systems and even individuals to treat others as outsiders in spaces they have every right to occupy. For many, the weight of these experiences is too much. They leave, not because they've failed, but because staying means constantly defending your right to be seen as human. And let's be clear, when someone chooses to uproot their life rather than stay in a place where they're dehumanized, that speaks volumes. So here's the truth. Respect, safety, and dignity are not luxuries. They are basic human needs. And when they're denied based on race, that's not just wrong, it's dangerous. Let this be a moment where we ask ourselves, are we willing to see what we've ignored? Are we ready to create space for conversations that are uncomfortable but necessary? Because real change starts when we listen, when we reflect, and when we act from a place of compassion. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Until we recognize the humanity in everyone, none of us are truly free. If you've watched up to this point, you're clearly someone who wants to understand the deeper truths behind why so many black people are leaving these countries, and what it means for the future. Drop a comment below with "Seeking Change" to show you're tuned in and thinking critically. Don't click away just yet. There's powerful insight ahead that could shift the way you see global migration and what's coming in 2025. Stay with us. This is a conversation you won't want to miss. Number 4. Russia. Let me speak directly to you for a moment, because this one's not just about facts or headlines. It's about real lives, real fear, and some tough choices. Russia ranks third on our list, and not without reason. While it might be a vast country known for art, literature, and iconic landmarks, for many black individuals living there, the experience can feel more like surviving a daily test than simply building a life. Have you ever wondered what it's like to walk through a crowd and feel eyes that aren't just curious but suspicious, or worse, hostile? In Russia, that's more than a passing discomfort. It's a pattern. Many black immigrants, especially African students and professionals, have reported persistent experiences of racial discrimination and, in some instances, violence. And what makes it especially challenging is not just the threat itself, but the feeling that there's nowhere to turn when it happens. Can you imagine reaching out to the authorities after an attack only to be ignored, or even treated like the problem yourself? Over the years, international organizations have tracked these incidents, and although official numbers show a decrease since the early 2000s, those living there tell a different story. Many still recount episodes of harassment, discrimination in housing, education, and employment, or being singled out during police checks. For some, going to university in Russia was supposed to be a leap toward a better future. Instead, they found themselves navigating both the academic world and a cold, unfamiliar social climate, often literally and emotionally. What kind of toll does that take on someone's mental health and self-worth? And here's the big question. If you're constantly made to feel like an outsider, like your presence is an unwanted exception, would you stay? That's why, year after year, we've seen a rising number of black residents choosing to leave Russia and encourage others not to follow. It's not just about fleeing discomfort. It's about seeking dignity, opportunity, and safety. And as we look toward 2025, the prediction is clear. Unless significant cultural and systemic changes occur, this exodus won't slow down, it may grow. Number 5. Ukraine. War is always terrifying, but sometimes the most haunting part isn't the bombs or gunfire. It's how people treat each other when everything falls apart. Ukraine's 2022 invasion by Russia didn't just shake the ground with missiles. It pulled back the curtain on a disturbing truth that many black people, especially African students, had been living with in silence. While chaos spread and people scrambled to flee, countless reports surfaced of black students being pushed off evacuation trains, denied entry at borders, and left for days without food or shelter. Meanwhile, white Ukrainians were swiftly moved to safety. This wasn't an accident. It was a system revealing its bias under pressure. A system that, even before the war, had already shown black immigrants that they were outsiders through discrimination in housing, education, and daily life. But here's the deeper message, the kind that feels almost prophetic. What happened in Ukraine is not just a tragedy of the past, it's a warning for the future. As we look ahead to 2025, the signs are clear. Black people are not just leaving Ukraine because of bombs. They're leaving because they've seen the truth of where they stand when crisis hits. And this trend will likely grow stronger. Ukraine's treatment of black residents and students during the war has become a symbol, a kind of prophecy, of what happens when a country invites you in for your money and your labor, but forgets your humanity when it matters most. The emotional scars of that betrayal run deep. For many, the trauma didn't end at the border. It became a part of their story. So now, a growing number of black communities are saying, never again. Ukraine is no longer seen as a land of opportunity, but a place that showed its true face in the darkest hour. And that realization is powerful. It shapes where people choose to live, who they choose to trust, and what they prioritize: safety, dignity, and the deep human need to be valued. If there's a prediction to take from all of this, it's this. In a world that continues to spin into uncertainty, people will not just flee from violence, they'll flee from invisibility. They'll flee from places where they're only wanted when things are good, and they'll seek new beginnings in countries where their presence is respected, not tolerated. Let this be a wake-up call, not just for Ukraine, but for the world. Because when a nation fails to protect all who live within its borders, it writes a future where trust dies. And when trust dies, so does the hope of unity. Number 6. Turkey. Number 5 on this journey is Turkey. And what's happening here speaks volumes about the silent struggles many black people face around the world. You see, people aren't leaving Turkey just because they miss home or crave something familiar. They're leaving because their presence is often met with suspicion, discomfort, or outright discrimination. In cities like Istanbul and Ankara, just being black can turn simple daily tasks into moments of deep stress. Picture walking into a store and immediately being watched, or getting pulled over for no reason other than how you look, not because of something you've done, just because you're there. This isn't about isolated incidents. It's about a pattern that too many have experienced. And it doesn't stop at the streets. In the job market, many black immigrants, especially women, find themselves stuck in domestic or service roles where they're overworked, underpaid, or sometimes not paid at all. They're expected to smile through it all, even when they're being treated more like property than people. One woman said, "It feels like I'm living in someone else's shadow, invisible when I need help, visible only when they need something from me. That kind of pain doesn't just wear you down, it pushes you out." Now, here's the contradiction that hurts even more. Turkey wants to be a modern bridge between cultures, a global connector. But socially, the bridges often lead nowhere for black people. Many in the black community there live in social isolation, struggling to find acceptance while facing microaggressions and structural racism every day. People may enjoy black culture, music, fashion, art, but when it comes to real inclusion, to being part of the community, the door often stays closed. And so the question becomes painfully real. How long can someone stay in a place where they're welcome only as long as they stay silent, invisible, or entertaining? That's the question thousands of black immigrants in Turkey have been asking themselves, and their answer is showing in the departure lines at the airport. Now I want to ask you, what does belonging mean to you? Is it just about being physically present, or is it about feeling seen, valued, and safe? This story teaches us something deeper, that a nation's progress isn't only in its economy or buildings, it's in how it treats the people who call it home, especially the most vulnerable. If we want to build communities that truly thrive, we have to start with compassion, respect, and the courage to see each other beyond stereotypes, because nobody should ever have to leave a place just to find their worth. You're still here, which means you care, not just about the facts, but about the people behind them. The reasons black communities are leaving these countries aren't just statistics, they're lived experiences. If this resonates with you, comment "Voices Matter" below to stand with those seeking safety, dignity, and a better future. Stay with us. What comes next might just change how you see the world. Number 7. Libya. Let's talk about Libya, a name that, for many black African migrants, doesn't bring to mind hope or opportunity, but fear, suffering, and loss. In 2025, slavery isn't just a dark chapter in the history books, it's a living, breathing reality in this North African nation. That might sound shocking, but the truth is even worse. Libya has become a place where human lives, especially black lives, are traded like cattle, sometimes for as little as $400. Yes, you heard that right. Even after CNN revealed this horror in 2017, the world moved on, but the pain didn't. The slave markets didn't shut down, the abuse didn't stop. If anything, the silence only grew louder. So let me ask you this. What does it say about our world when slavery continues, and yet we barely speak of it? Libya was once a key stop on the route to Europe for many hoping for a better life. But since the fall of Gaddafi in 2011, the country has fallen into chaos, ruled by militias and traffickers who see people not as humans, but as currency. And black migrants? They're the most vulnerable of all. The color of their skin makes them a target, a price tag, a statistic in a system built on exploitation. For many, what was supposed to be a journey toward freedom becomes a descent into horror. Detention centers where abuse is a daily routine, food and clean water are luxuries, and survival depends on luck more than anything else. Some face torture, others disappear. Families are broken, and hope begins to die a slow, silent death. But here's a harder truth. While we might shake our heads in disbelief, many governments are quietly making deals with Libyan forces to keep these migrants away from their borders. Instead of offering protection, they fund the very system that detains and dehumanizes them. Why? Because it's easier to pay others to hide the suffering than to face it themselves. Out of sight, out of mind, right? But if we turn away, if we stay quiet, aren't we part of the silence that lets this continue? Ask yourself, how desperate must someone be to cross scorching deserts, risk smugglers, face armed men, and still believe it's worth the chance? That's not a journey of ambition, that's a fight for survival, a cry for life. And when people finally escape this nightmare, they don't just walk away. They run, they flee, they never look back. Because what they've lived through isn't just trauma, it's a brutal reminder that the world still hasn't learned how to protect the most vulnerable. So what can we learn from this? First, silence is not neutral, it's dangerous. Turning away from injustice allows it to grow. Second, human dignity must never be negotiable. No one, regardless of race, background, or circumstance, should be reduced to a price tag. And finally, we must ask deeper questions. Are we truly building a world where people feel safe in their homelands, or are we only managing the fallout of systems we helped break? The suffering in Libya isn't just their story, it's a reflection of global failure. And if we care, we must care loudly. Number 8. Algeria. Algeria has become one of the countries where black people, particularly migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, are being driven out at an alarming rate. Not quietly, not diplomatically, but through acts that reveal a deeper social and political intolerance. This isn't about economic downturns or limited resources. It's about a climate where being black seems to automatically mean being unwelcome. For many of these migrants, Algeria was never meant to be the final destination. It was a stepping stone, a place to find temporary work, send money home, maybe even start anew. But upon arrival, they are often met with suspicion, discrimination, and at times open hostility. Instead of opportunity, they're faced with raids on their homes, brutal removals, and forced expulsions that disregard any sense of human rights or dignity. Security forces, acting with impunity, break into neighborhoods, detain people without cause or process, and expel them to border regions under dangerous and inhumane conditions. There's no court hearing, no defense, not even a chance to speak. It's as if their presence alone is a problem to be erased. This kind of treatment has roots in deep-seated xenophobia, where the government portrays black migrants as criminals or social threats, and much of the population has absorbed this narrative. It becomes a cycle. Fear and prejudice feeding policy, policy justifying mistreatment, and mistreatment normalizing fear. So when we ask why people are fleeing Algeria, the real question is, how could anyone stay? In a society where you're not just overlooked but actively dehumanized, fleeing isn't a choice, it's survival. It's hard to imagine building a life under constant threat, where daily existence feels like walking a tightrope over hostility. And while human rights organizations raise alarms, their warnings often fall on deaf ears. The silence, the inaction, it speaks volumes. For those of us watching from afar, especially in an age where migration is a global reality and racial justice a universal concern, this is a sobering reminder. Safety, dignity, and opportunity should never be reserved for a select few. We must ask ourselves how we, in our own communities, respond to those who are different. Are we building bridges, or are we quietly reinforcing borders of bias? If we want a more compassionate world, it begins by truly seeing others as human, regardless of where they come from or the color of their skin. If this story moved you, leave a comment with just one word: humanity. Let's remind the world that compassion should never have borders. Number 9. Brazil. Brazil is a land of rhythm, color, and deep cultural pride, home to samba, carnival, and an Afro-Brazilian legacy that has shaped music, art, and spirituality across the globe. But behind the beat of the drums and the energy of the parades lies a sobering reality. For many black Brazilians, life is not joyful or free. It's a daily struggle just to survive. And that struggle is driving more and more people to make the painful decision to leave. Here's something to really sit with. Over 56% of Brazil's population identifies as black or mixed race. That means Brazil has the largest black population outside of Africa. But even with those numbers, black Brazilians are still treated like second-class citizens. In fact, over 75% of homicide victims in Brazil are black. That's not just a statistic, it's a warning sign that something is deeply broken. It's like being the foundation of a house that refuses to let you inside. Inequality in Brazil is so clear it doesn't hide behind polite language anymore. On average, Afro-Brazilians earn about 40% less than their white counterparts. They're missing from political leadership, but overrepresented in prisons. And when it comes to police interactions, the data is devastating. If you're black, you're far more likely to be stopped, arrested, or even killed. It paints a picture where your very identity puts a target on your back. So the question becomes, how can a nation overflowing with black culture still fail so miserably at protecting black lives? That's the heartbreaking paradox of Brazil. Culture is celebrated, yes, but the people behind it are left vulnerable, unseen, and unprotected. Many are waking up to this contradiction and deciding that enough is enough. They're seeking countries where their children can walk freely, where opportunities aren't limited by skin color, and where equity is more than just a word in a speech. So let me ask you, if you were in their shoes, would you stay in a place where your history is honored but your future is uncertain, where your food, music, and traditions are embraced, but your dignity is not? That's the internal battle that so many black Brazilians are fighting right now. And here's the deeper message we need to take away from this. Representation is not enough. Celebration without justice is empty. A society can sing your songs, dance to your rhythms, and wear your colors, but if it won't protect your life or honor your rights, then it's not truly celebrating you. Real progress means building a world where people don't have to flee their homeland just to feel safe, respected, and empowered. So let's ask ourselves, are we creating that kind of world, or just covering the cracks with confetti? Number 10. France. France, a country known for its grand ideals of liberté, égalité, fraternité, seems like it should be a place of freedom and fairness for all. But for many black people living there, those words often feel hollow, more like a marketing slogan than a lived reality. The promise of equality loses its shine when everyday life involves constant police checks based solely on skin color, or being trailed through high-end stores as if simply shopping is suspicious. It's not an occasional inconvenience, it's a pattern that chips away at one's dignity. In fact, recent studies reveal that black residents in France are up to 20 times more likely to be stopped by police than white individuals. That's not just bad luck, that's systemic profiling. And the problem goes deeper. Many black communities are pushed into the Banlieues, outskirts of major cities, that are often neglected, underfunded, and stigmatized. These areas become symbols of exclusion, not opportunity. On top of that, barriers in employment and housing persist, making it harder to get ahead, no matter how qualified or hardworking you are. But perhaps the most painful wound isn't always the discrimination, it's the silence. In schools, colonial history is often sugar-coated or erased altogether, leaving younger generations without a full understanding of their past. Black contributions to French society are frequently overlooked or minimized, and representation in leadership, media, and public discourse is sorely lacking. It creates an environment where black individuals feel both hypervisible and invisible at the same time, constantly watched, but never truly seen. That kind of psychological toll wears people down, and now many are deciding that enough. A growing number of black professionals, creatives, and families are choosing to leave, heading to countries like Portugal, Germany, or the Netherlands, where inclusivity is more than just a word, or even returning to African nations, where their presence is not questioned, but embraced. If you've ever felt out of place in a community you've called home for years, despite speaking the language, contributing to the culture, and showing up with love, it's easier to understand why people are walking away. They're not just chasing comfort, they're seeking peace, safety, and the simple right to exist without fear or prejudice. So while France may still attract tourists with its art, architecture, and cuisine, many of its black residents are packing their bags, not out of hate, but out of hope, for a better life elsewhere. As we move forward, keep asking, what makes a place truly livable? It's not just beauty or tradition, it's the space it gives for every soul to thrive. Let's keep going. As we've seen today, the reasons black people are fleeing certain countries are deep, painful, and often hidden beneath the surface. This isn't just about geography, it's about dignity, safety, and the human right to be seen and respected. At the Journey of Wisdom, we believe in shedding light on hard truths, not to divide, but to awaken compassion and spark change. If this video opened your eyes or your heart, we invite you to be part of this ongoing conversation. Please like, share, and subscribe to The Journey of Wisdom, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss our future videos exploring stories that matter. Thank you for walking this path with us. Until next time, stay aware, stay kind, and keep seeking the truth.